the designs that you even helped make were really iconic.
The Master Chief's armor in Halo, I redesigned it in Halo 2. The sketches you see in Master Chief's armor in Halo 2, I was asked by Marcus Leto to provide some of my take on the armor, to redesign it. I guess you could say add, my ideas to his armor.
And then I'm writing a book on my career called Visual Atrium, The Art of Eddie Smith. It mirrors my website. First round is underway. Make sure it's done right.
Welcome to the Ducking Podcast.
Sup, Duckers?
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome again.
All right,
hey.
You want me to do intro or do you want to do intro?
You go ahead and do intro.
What's up, Duckers? Welcome to the Ducking Podcast. I'm here today with our host, Gabe Anon, and our friend, mutual Andrew. I'm sorry, I don't think the last name was ever mentioned, so
You're Andrew. Yeah, there we go. And for those that don't know, I'm Dan Mateo. I'm a music artist, but I also love talking about movies and cinema and video games and all that other stuff. So that's why I'm here. We have a special guest today. For all of you that we talked about on the last podcast episode, it's a very important person. He's very integral to a lot of people's childhoods. He's the reason why you have a face to the name of one of the most popular video game franchises in history. So without further ado, Gabe, do you want to intro our guest?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ed Smith.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Hello, Duckers. All you Duckers out there, what's up?
Oh, we're doing good, man. How is it down in Cali? How's the weather? A little bit warmer than here in back home in Washington?
Oh yeah, nice and sunny. About 70 degrees. That's good.
Oh yeah.
God, one can only wish, dude.
We need that right here, right now. It's like windy and it's awful. It's cold. It's brutal.
Yeah, he came in. He was like, "We're doing the podcast today. No heat," and I was like, "Oh no, no."
Yeah, we're actually still working on getting like a heater in here. So until then, we're just gonna be freezing our toes off.
Yeah, you're like a special guest. Bring your winter coat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although just any consolation, 69, 70 degrees to Californians, they think it's cold.
Does that explain why you're wearing the coat?
No, it's just comfortable. It's a pretty light coat.
That was the thing that I had when I visited California the last time, is that in Washington, it's a very humid cold. So you kind of get you get a lot of wind that bites through a lot of your layers because it's mixed with a lot of the water in the air, because it's a more humid climate here. But if you go to California, especially around San Francisco, it's it's a dry cold, just like it's dry heat. So it bites, but it's not as intense as Washington.
Oh yeah, definitely. Eddie, I really want to get started with this piece right here, because I know you have some years in the industry. What was that? Roughly 26, you said?
Say again?
How many years did you say you had in the industry?
Yeah, a total 26. Two of those 26 years, I was an intern while I was in college.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
26 years.
Yeah, and
crazy.
It is insane.
It's longer than I've been alive.
So what year did you actually start, would you say?
96.
Oh, that was about the time we were born. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm older than I look.
Right. So for the audience, we'll go ahead. I do have this written down. Eddie has worked under Wizards of the Coast, Microsoft, Sony, and Bungie. You've been all over the map. And today, as much as I'd love to talk about your industry experience, I actually want to save that for another episode, because I want to know the man behind the art. And I kind of want to get a story of you and your life story, where you came from and how everything came to be for you. So I do want to start with your life story. So let's start from the beginning. When and where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. So I was born in the Kaiser Hospital right on Sunset Boulevard, across the street from the Scientology church.
Okay, that's pretty rad. You know what I'm saying? It's this
Scientology church at that time.
I just never, chose that sort of faith. But yeah, if it gives you any reference to where I was born,
It's unintentionally dope.
Like, oh yeah, definitely. Back in those days, things were a little bit different than they are now in terms of the entertainment and inspiration, right? For guys like us, we draw inspiration from the things that we grew up with. And that's a universal kind of rule. I imagine everything was the same for you as well. So that being said, back in those golden years when you were starting out or when you were growing up, what did you actually take inspiration from? How did everything come to be?
well, I took as far as my game, what got me into games, concept art, wanting to do concept art, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Aliens, especially. I remember when in 1986, so we were walking. I was with my parents. This was around Christmas time. We were doing some Christmas shopping, and there was a video store that used to be in almost every mall in the country. It was called Suncoast. And it wasn't just a video store; it was a movie memorabilia shop too, as well. So there was a book in the window called and it was the first edition book on an industrial light and magic.
Wow.
And on the cover is a still of the X-wing fighting TIE fighters. So it was basically the first book about ILM, and I really wanted that book, and my parents got it for me because they hadn't seen me. I wasn't like an avid reader as a kid, but they knew since I was 3, I loved drawing, and I pointed to the book and said, "That's what I want to do for a living." So they got me the book, and they didn't. Normally, they would say, "Oh, we'll see about Christmas time, or we'll wait to see what Santa says." No, they actually got it right there.
Oh, that's cool.
So you
Wow.
kind of knew early on what you wanted to do.
So yeah, I knew since then I wanted to be a concept artist, and guys like Joe Johnston and Ralph McQuarrie, when I read about who designed all those spaceships that we all know and love. Yep, that's what I wanted to do, and here I am.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. That's like really cool that like your parents actually kind of like really supported that notion. Like they purchased that book right then and there for you. And I'm going to guess you read that thing front to back.
Front to back to front, drew some of the pictures in it, tried to copy a lot of the styles and a lot of the work. I didn't just study concept art. I also practiced painting, especially when I was in college. I would try to do matte paintings. And back then, the matte paintings were done using oils and acrylics on glass paint.
On glass?
So, we weren't thinking about digital matte painting. They were done on glass paintings. They were real paintings. And the reason why they were done on glass paintings because there was the hole that was left in it is where they would project the live action footage.
I think Star Wars did this for A New Hope. So like those sequences where you actually see the long hallways that go down and you see Obi-Wan like sneaking onto the Death Star.
Yeah, the corridors of the Death Star where he's like on the main reactor.
He's on that little reactor device. Yeah, that's a glass panel that was in front of the camera, and they shot it at like a really high aperture so that everything was in focus.
Yeah, it was a VistaVision camera. That's what it was called. And the matter of fact, the godfather of matte painting, Albert Whitlock, researched him all the way up to like one of the greatest matte painters ever, Michael Congrazio. He did the best matte painting ever done was the Raiders of the Lost Ark ending scene with the big warehouse full of all the different crates. Like 90s. The only thing that's real is half that little walkway that the guy's pushing the ark through. Everything else is a painting.
Everything else was fake?
Yeah.
Okay.
All the hand painted. Matter of fact, it was so good. Look how long it was on the screen for like over half, for a third of the credits. Usually matte paintings, they didn't last. They didn't stay on the movie screen for longer than maybe 3 seconds. But then you could see the brush strokes and you could see that
your eye would start to pick up all the things that were
and actually picking up on the things like, oh wait, none of this is real.
Yeah, because movies didn't even when they came out on videotape, if you paused it, you'd have a lot of tracking static. It wasn't like digital media today where you can pause something and it's just as clear as when you're watching it and you can analyze every frame and freeze it and look at. You couldn't do that back then. So they didn't. as long as it convinced the audience that it was real for the time it was up there on the screen, that's all that mattered. That matte painting was so good, it was up on the screen for 2 minutes.
That is crazy to be able to have that much and kind of like fool the audience for that amount of time with things that like basically a 2D painting.
Talk about an illusion.
Yeah, that's about a really insane.
Illusion, like back before the CGI days, like the level of artistry you'd have to go through to just pull some of those. Like, it's such an analog trick.
Yeah. I mean,
I've watched A New Hope so many times on VHS. I think I've worn out the VHS tape. I never. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's all a painting, traditionally hand painted painting.
jeez, man.
ILM didn't go digital until after it's like the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s.
That's crazy to think about that, like, especially for wide set pieces. I imagine like I think it was like I can't remember what director did it, but like the 50s interpretation of Odysseus, and then like Jason and the Argonauts, Planet of the Apes. Like, to think that at least from what I'm surmising, that at least a good portion of those were like matte paintings and matte backgrounds, to be able to kind of convey this sense of unrealism for a second it's kind of crazy by today's standards, because everything's done for us, and to show kind of analog work like that, that's insane.
Yeah, there's still guys that do it today, and then they might use the digital medium to sweeten some of the frames, especially stop motion animation. There's some artists that still traditionally do it, because it's almost a lost art, but there's a richness to something that is real, using real lighting.
That's true,
They call it practical effects today. Back then, it was just special effects. Today, they call it practical effects. They use real models or real,
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, like the whole. I don't know if it's true, but at least from what I've heard, like Christopher Nolan's a great advocate for the practical effects scene, when it can be used to its fullest extent, like not using CGI unless it is necessary, or it will work for the scene in a way that the audience won't be able to tell the difference. Because I think a lot of people get that misconstrued as that, like, Christopher Nolan hates CGI. No, I think it's coming from that practical background of like practical effects and using real material things to convey a false reality to the audience, and then just filling in the little gaps with CGI when it needs to, but still having that heavy foundation.
A lot of times CGI makes things so perfect that it something in our brain tells us this isn't real. It's too perfect. That was one of the reasons why the greats like Michael Fabrizio, Harrison Ellenshaw, and those guys, if you saw their paintings in real life, they would just look like very fresh, very painterly, loose brushstrokes. Thing is, with loose brushstrokes, when you stand back from it, it looks crisp.
Wow.
That's true. That would make sense.
Yeah, there does come a point where it becomes uncanny valley. When it's yeah. So
I used to call it Cineburst. Back there was you guys weren't born yet, or you were babies. There was a commercial called Cineburst, and it had these CG looking sharks, and of course they were so crisp that they looked gummy, looked like candy, and they were supposed to look like that. But then when you start trying to make realistic things that you want to look natural, it still has the Cineburst look.
I didn't even know that.
That is really cool. Ed, I do want to know a little bit as to, like, when did you actually start drawing? When did you really start this journey, pick up this skill, and become better and better? And who taught you, and where did all that come from? Let's actually start at your adolescency. When you were a kid, is that about the time you would say you'd start drawing?
Yeah, the ILM book. In my book that I'm writing about my career, I say I was born on September 29th, 1974. But I was really born in 1986 when we were in that mall, and I got that ILM book. That was the year I was really born, because that's when I knew what I wanted to do, and I started working towards it. I wasn't just drawing because it was fun to draw. Most of us drew as kids. Most people. It's just usually that age, like around middle school, when you start getting interested in girls, or girls start getting interested in boys, everybody stops doing, certain things that all kids do. But those of us who keep doing it, it's usually that's what we're dedicated to. And I knew I wanted to be an illustrator when I was, I was what, 11 in 1986. Yeah. Wow. Matter of fact, that was such a great year because Aliens came out that year, Top Gun came out that year.
So that's a bunch of great movies now that are like revered almost.
Those are like, for us, those movies are like the film school, like the films that you need to study before you even pick up the camera.
Well, especially like I would say like one of the best ones from, I'll just even draw from your catalog, Eddie, like the original Aliens that Ridley Scott directed. I mean, watching it remastered, even through the remastered version, you can still see like just how clear and crisp everything was. The lighting was on point, and
that came out in '79,
which is crazy.
Imagine how that in '79. Yeah, imagine how that looked. It's just, it's hard to provide context for you guys now, but you just try to pretend you've never seen something like that before. And we're talking 30 and literally 40 years, almost 40 years ago. That's saying these movies were made.
Lord in heaven.
That still hold up today. And, because all you had to do was add a little digital sweetening, and these movies look like they were made last year.
Oh yeah, that vent scene where they first encounter the alien, that's still one of the best like build up masterful scenes of like not showing the monster too much and then just being like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, that was the trick to Aliens horror, was that they used your imagination against you. It's what you don't see that freaks you out more than what you actually are seeing.
Yeah, that's why one of the worst mistakes AVP made was showing the Queen's full body.
Yeah, that's way too early.
Like, you don't want to see these. It's better when you really can't see their full contour. That makes them even scarier. AVP was still fun, but
it just doesn't have the same flavor as the original.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that movies were kind of your main medium of entertainment?
Your mic is low.
Oh, would you say that movies were kind of your main medium of entertainment as a kid?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had TV shows, but movies were an event when I was a kid. They were a much higher level. It's like it's sports. If there's high school sports and then there's pro. TV was like high school and maybe college. The movies were pro. Matter of fact, back then, movie actors felt TV was like their career was failing, or they it was seen as a lower art form.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy
like
crap,
movie
man.
actors never, they're like, that's TV. I don't, they don't, it was, matter of fact, TV actors they wanted to get into movies. It was like a step, there was a point where games was like that. That's when I got into games. I looked at it as, a stepping stone to get to filmmaking, film production, concept art. Because at that time, games, you can only fit so many polygons on the screen, and most of the games were still pixelated back then. So you couldn't do the kind of concept art that you did in movies and games because you weren't going to be able to make those assets the exact same visual fidelity because it demands of technology.
I think that's always kind of been. Go ahead.
I was going to say, by the time I'd say after the Xbox, games really started to the fidelity in games started to really improve drastically. You saw that, after about 2000, graphically games just started going leaps and bounds. It was like the arms race in the, where we're going from prop planes to nukes.
Yeah, exactly.
15 years.
In the span of like a half decade, you had like a completely new like innovation, every like 5 to 6 years.
Jets that could fly in the stratosphere when 10 years before that, you literally had.
Yeah, exactly. We went from Wright Brothers to the space shuttle in like a decade or less. I remember that too. Of like when the Arkham games came out. This is why, like, at least with modern games, it feels like almost a regression sometimes on some platforms, because if you look at like my big thing is I love when people take something that is useful as a tool and bring it to the max, like using Unreal Engine or using the engines they had at the time for the cinematic trailer for Arkham City, the Hugo Strange cinematic trailer, where he's interrogating one of the guys that he sent to go basically find out about Batman, right? He set them up and stuff like that. And the whole trailer is probably the most lifelike 5 minutes I've ever seen come out of a game-generated engine. And it's kind of like, we like 5 years before that, we were working
holds up.
Yeah, we're
That one
working with
trailer's
like
still-
Modern Warfare and stuff like that, you know, and stuff was looking like pretty okay, and we had like really good action scenes and all that, and then it just like took off.
Yeah. Modern Warfare was the first game that I played that made me feel like, okay, I'm playing an action, a military action movie.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
movies like The Rock, or remember The Rock? I mean, you guys were still either bait. Rock came out, what, 98, I think 97, bait? So yeah,
Oh, the movie.
The movie The Rock with not the wrestlers movie.
Yeah,
star.
no.
That's what I actually thought he was talking about for a second.
Yeah, no, movies were like around when Michael Bay and was just starting to step in on the scene. You had these really high impact, high action films that featuring special forces. And
Oh, wait.
Modern Warfare felt like that kind of.
I was gonna say The Rock. Isn't that the story of them like finding? There's something that's on Alcatraz, but it's entirely based around Alcatraz. I haven't even seen that movie yet.
These ex-military or these ex-marine recon soldiers, they used the Alcatraz as a base stronghold to launch a terrorist attack. And Sean Connery is an ex-SAS agent. That is, let's see, the terrorist attack they were going to launch were some rockets filled with poison gas. Nicolas Cage played a chemist who was worked for the FBI, who defused bombs, but specializing in chemical weapons. So, and then he had some Navy SEALs had to go, help insert him into the.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So,
and of course, Michael Biehn, he was the SEAL commander.
So it seemed like as you were growing up, there were plenty of places to take inspiration from and actually start your artistic journey and kind of replicating what you're seeing on the big screens at the time, as well as other forms of media.
Well, those movies didn't just inspire me; they inspired a lot of the games you grew up on. I mean, the game Halo, for instance, that's aliens. I mean, even down to the Black Sergeant. It's, Sergeant Johnston is a punk.
Get on the ready line, Marine. Get something to do. Or a giant hula hoop. We're not going to let them have it. What we will let them have is a belly full of lead and a pool of their own blood to drown in. Am I right, Marines? Sir, yes, sir. Damn right I am. Now move it out. Double time.
Oh,
I mean, I can't believe you guys didn't know that. Or didn't, if I'm making a connection you didn't know, you're welcome. But yeah, it was very, we were very inspired by aliens. The Pelican is the drop ship, and even the Pillar of Autumn in that shape.
yeah, the Pillar of Autumn. I knew that the Pillar of Autumn shape, as well as a lot of UNSC hardware, even down to the armor, was inspired by the Alien film from James Cameron.
When we were making games, we just wanted to make something cool that, based on the things we grew up with. So to answer your question about my childhood inspiration, we just, that's what I applied to my illustration. It's just the movies I grew up watching, the design work, things that went into how things looked, not just the spaceships, the set designs. It could have taken place in an ancient city. I was into that fantasy. I wasn't just into sci-fi, I was into fantasy. If I had to set design a Western, I would have loved to do that. So I don't like to be put in a box. So even if you look at my art portfolio, there's a myriad of different type of artwork and style.
Yeah, and I'll actually say I think around this portion of the video, I'll start posting some of the artwork that you have on your website onto the screen, because these were really impressive. And going right into it, like, you've worked on some of the titles that literally built our childhoods. Like, everybody in this room played some of the games that you helped develop, like Halo 1 and 2, like any Wizards of the Coast. I know you're a Wizard of the Coast fan.
I saw you had some D&D drawings.
Oh, wait, hang on. Go ahead, speak.
Hello. Can you hear me? It's really quiet.
Barely. Your mic is low.
1 second.
I think it might be the gain function.
I think
That mic needs some caffeine.
just give me 1 second. Let me put it into another.
Needs some Black Rifle coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Okay. So let's actually move into your junior high and high school years. The people you've probably met when your art probably started developing. Go ahead and tell us what life was like growing up for you.
It was fun, but sometimes not so fun because, growing up, what I wanted to do for a living and what I enjoyed doing was not very common among Black folks, especially young Black men. You see it a lot more today, but let's just say being a nerd wasn't a good thing in the Black community. It's kind of still isn't, but it's a lot more accepted, because anime, everybody watches anime now. When I was coming up, a very small niche group watched it, and you weren't really Black. It was mostly every other race but that. And so we had sharing interests that you all share today, and that got everybody into sci-fi fantasy. It didn't really, that was lost among the Black community in the 80s and 90s when I grew up.
Oh man.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting to see. I can't speak on that side. I could definitely speak on being in middle school and being, bullied one way or the other because oh dude, what do you watch? Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah.
You weirdo, you nerd. But it's like that was the thing growing up.
I've been to that.
Exactly. Yeah. It just wasn't cool. And then if you fast forward like not even 5 years after that, because I think I was in middle school around like 2012, 13. You just fast forward like 5 years, and all of a sudden, we're setting the stage for like Ready Player One, and they're using like Twitch language in it and stuff like that. And it's like it's starting to, what wasn't cool is suddenly being discovered by everybody that just shunned it like 10 years ago, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually cool. It seems it's always been cool. You just didn't want to know.
It seems like the nerds were right. Yeah. Everybody is some form of a nerd. Currently in our generation, it seemed like it was a little bit more well accepted when I was growing up. Going through junior high and high school, especially, that's when people are actually starting to dive deep into the lore of some of their favorite franchises.
Yeah.
They were always kind of like, well, you can't play video games forever, stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was not the case. That wasn't the case.
I mean, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, eventually everything did turn into, game design was the field that people wanted to break into. It was also competitive gaming really started taking a stance when we were growing up, especially junior high and high school.
I think that's the point where it's starting to get more accepted by people, is when you have like esports coming on the screen and people making tons of money actually playing video games.
Yeah, that was unheard of when I was in middle school. Matter of fact, I mean, you had D&D, but you had D&D cliques and people that liked sci-fi fantasy groups when I was in middle school, but it wasn't as popular as it is today. Which I appreciate that it's popular today, because now people aren't ostracized or made to feel like they're weirdos for being interested in that. So in the late 80s, I had a small group of friends that still, like Benny, my friend Benny, Terry, and Chris Hunt. They're both in the game industry today, and we met in 7th grade.
Wow. So you guys. So it sounds like people that are in the industry that were more the heavy hitters during our early childhood titles, you guys grew up together.
Yeah, but we were, it's kind of, maybe you can call it fate for, 3 Black kids to still, in a neighborhood, a Black neighborhood, to kind of all go to the same school, share the same interests, and we weren't spread out to where we never met each other. It's like we were brought together, that kind of thing. Because in our industry, it's common now. It's very diverse now, but it wasn't back then.
Now that makes sense. If we could real quick,
Your video feed just froze.
it knows that you're talking to us, so it's trying to mess things up mid interview.
No, it's okay.
Here.
Just do a quick refresh.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
There he is.
It's
It's like, hey, it's just a big podcast.
Yeah. When would you say that era really started turning around? Because the designs that you even helped make were really iconic for us. That, like, we all recognize Master Chief's Mjolnir armor. We recognize the Covenant ship. The designs you literally drew up for these games.
Well, the Master Chief's armor and Halo, I didn't design. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I redesigned it in Halo 2.
Okay.
And then a lot of the surface details you see that were finalized, those were done via 3D. But yeah, like the sketches you see in Master Chief's armor in Halo 2. I was asked by Marcus Leto to, provide some of my take on the armor to redesign it. So I really appreciate him for allowing me to, I guess you could say, add, my ideas to his armor, because, Halo 1 was super successful. And usually after something is successful, they don't want to change that. So the fact that we were allowed to completely, redesign the Chief's armor. And I remember back then, because Marcus asked me, like, what would you change about it? And I said that DMX looking helmet. I would make it a little bit more military.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hated it. Like, I was like, he looks like a BMX biker.
That's so funny. Okay. So I probably got some micro details wrong, but it's really interesting and fascinating that, like, it seemed like the industry was almost kind of closed off to you, and then it's opened up. But you were also, for us, it felt like the early days of the game design, game making, when you were starting.
The industry was closed off to me. I would say just the culture that inspired the industry, it wasn't really shared. It wasn't really prominent in Black culture when I was growing up. Now it's prominent in everybody. Everybody appreciates it. Look how well Dune is. Everybody's going to see Dune. It's not just non-Black people. Everybody's going to see it. Everybody is, But if you like me and Chris and Vinny, we grew up talking about Dune during 1986 Dune.
Oh, geez, yeah, that was the older 86. Those were the 86 films, right?
That was David Lynch's. He was sort of the Denis Villeneuve of back then. Yeah,
interesting.
Dune, comparatively, Dune was equal. It was equally groundbreaking for that day in time.
I mean, I remember watching, like, the first Dune was announced to come out, and the only reason I knew what Dune was is because one time when I was in, want to say, like, I think it was like the Museum of Culture down in Seattle, and I was with my whole family, and we were going through, and I think they had like a Terminator exhibit, which one of my favorite franchises ever. Great franchise. But then all of a sudden I think they had some of the props from the 86 movie. And my dad was like, how do they even know about Dune? Only we knew about Dune when it came out. And my mom started, like, just being like, oh my God, what are you talking about? And I turned to him and I was like, so what's Dune? And he was like, you have no idea.
I'm glad you said that. How your mom reacted, that was the majority of the public.
Yes, yeah. That's what they said too.
Yeah. But now everybody knows what. So David, I compared him to Denis Villeneuve because of the vision, Lynch's vision, and the style and the way the movie carries itself felt like what Dune would be.
Yeah.
Just like today's Dune, it feels like that world. Even though it's completely different vision than Lynch's, there's little bits of inspiration. You can see it. The still suits aren't that.
I was just going to mention the still suits because I watched the 86 version before the first Denis Villeneuve came out. And it's really interesting because those still suits are like damn near carbon copies. Like they have the same look, same feel, same thinness, like skin tight, and then like the same type of design going through the suit. It's really
Didn't look like an astronaut suit. It looked like a regular piece of clothing that like people living in the desert needed to survive.
it looked like an amalgamated machine that had one singular purpose, and that's what I really liked about it. Because like if you look at that, and then the still suit from Denis Villeneuve's vision for Dune, it's eerily similar in how they look, how they feel, the ergonomics of it all. It's really cool to see those, like you were talking about, the little gems.
Yeah, we could talk about Doom. This would totally derail the show.
Yeah.
No, we can't.
I
Definitely could.
we need a. Yeah, we did talk about Dune. We talked about Dune last.
Like you about it.
Although I do like the Chris knives in the '86 version better.
Oh, that's a take. The Chris knives in the '86 version were better. So
Discussion for another time. Okay, let's do it.
So I'm gonna reel it back into the high school portion. So as you were growing up, we'll discuss any. So what I really want to talk about is like as you were growing up, just before you were about to leave high school, right? What you already? It seemed like you already really wanted. You really knew what you wanted to do after you had graduated. It seemed like you already knew where to go and what to do. What were other things that you were doing during your junior high to high school years that would be worth noting in terms of your development that also contributed into your art?
Well, ironically, when I was transitioning into high school, I didn't draw as much because by that time I started playing basketball a lot. I was on the basketball team in high school and college. So high school, I was in an art program called the Herbert Ryman Living Masters Program. So when I went to that program, it helped me get focused on learning academic level college art. So it was kind of like I was the art version of imagine like a 9th grader, 10th grader taking, what do you call it, second or third or fourth year level college course.
Oh,
So like if you're on a track to be an engineer, you're in 10th grade going to Caltech.
oh, wow.
Or you're in 10th grade going to DigiPen.
Oh, crap.
So it's almost like
Okay,
Running
yeah.
Start today.
Yeah, that's it. I was good. Yeah, running start.
That's
very,
what it is now.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
And Herbert Ryman was the original concept artist who designed Disneyland.
What?
I talk about it in detail in my book of how I got in the program. Chris was in the program too in the 9th grade, and he told me about it. You had to enter a piece of artwork, and it was something you had to audition for. They only selected at that time, I think, 10 students in all of LA County.
Oh,
wow.
okay.
That's very short list.
Yeah, and I was in it for 2 years. Although if you look at their alumni, I'm for 1 year, but I was there for 2. I was there for 2, not years, but 2 sessions.
School records
Interesting.
being inaccurate.
Yeah.
That is.
Well, sometimes people make mistakes. I don't think I was left out on purpose.
No.
Nah.
I remember being in 2 separate,
I think it's mainly like I know I've had this problem before, that schools have kind of turned into bureaucracies almost, and there's a
little bit, and they probably weren't as digital in terms of their record keeping back then. So like, would you say everything was kept on paper back in those days?
Yeah, and file cabinets. They started keeping some records in computers, but I just chalked it up to a clerical error. I don't think it was just anyone purposely not putting in there. I know I went for they had the spring and summer. I went for it was 90 or 91, if I can remember. But I wasn't just there for one session. I was there for 2.
Okay.
It's pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie, especially I had no idea. It's weird seeing kind of like other people's going through their life and being like, oh yeah, by the way, I was here. You know what he did? He just designed Disneyland. Just
Well, it's amazing that because it's a small world right now. There were people that we went to high school with that kind of like had their little claims to fame. Like I know your cousin did. And then there was also, that's a separate story that I don't want to get into. But like,
The program was in Ryman's name, and it was a program that his family started in his name. I mean, he had passed away, but it was to teach young artists, classical illustration. That, of course, if you were on a track to becoming like a Disney Imagineer, which I got to visit Imagineering when I was in high school. Part of that program. That's where they come up with all the ideas for their rides and their attractions. So, I remember seeing the Indiana Jones ride when it was concept art on a drawing table. And it was originally supposed to be a, toboggan. Like, you remember in the Temple of Doom when they were in those rail cars?
Oh, yeah.
So it was originally supposed to be a roller coaster.
What? Oh, that's cool, dude.
Yeah,
That'd be so cool.
So they toured us through the building, and I saw, I don't remember the guy's name, but the concept artist that was working on the concepts for that ride. And, this ride is this ride is what, 30 years old now? But I remember when it was literally on the.
That's pretty insane. Sometimes I forget how new I am in terms of like all the new agey stuff, and it kind of being like, oh well, I was around when the 360 came out. I didn't play.
Yeah, that's a little bit more recent, and it's like seeing other people. It's like, okay, well, your equivalent of that was, I remember seeing this Indiana Jones ride when it was a blueprint. That's insane to be able to be like, oh, that ride you've been on? Yeah, I knew when that was created. It's just this weird thing of like, oh crap, oh whoa.
Yeah.
So Ed, let's wrap up your adolescent life, and let's move on and into your early career college experience, right?
Okay.
It seemed like you had a lot going for you up until this point. Where did you decide to go to school after graduating high school?
I was recruited to play basketball at UC Davis. So my freshman year, I went to UC Davis. So that's in Davis, California, just outside Sacramento. And majored in art. I knew what I wanted to do. But my focus there was really basketball. And, I did really well in my art classes, didn't do very well in my academic class. Davis was like damn near Ivy League. And if it wasn't, I had two friends at UC Davis, that, I knew a lot of people after being there. I started coming out of my social shell, but there was only two people I really, I've always never hung around a lot of people on a constant level, where you just always around a bunch of people. You would usually see me by myself or with one or two people. And one of those people was my friend, Paul Calderon. We still keep in touch today because he's from LA as well. And my other friend, her name was London. If you didn't see me with Paul or London, you saw me with both of them. And London is now the mayor of San Francisco.
What?
Yeah, if he would help me with my home, I would have flunked out of David the boy first. She was
Holy crap, man!
It is. See, this is what I meant by it's a small world. Before the United States population is like, what are we at? Like 300, Dave? 330 million? Probably back when he was growing up during the college years, it was a lot less than that. So people that it seems like as you guys are growing up, you started taking like bigger and bigger positions. It seems like there was a lot more rooms for like those icon positions that we know about now.
Yeah. So some of the math classes and science classes she would help me with, along with, she kept me from failing those classes. But the A's I was getting in my art classes kind of helped save me from flunking out each quarter.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So that's insane to be like, oh yeah, by the way, the mayor helped me out with my, and I think it's just because like that is so cool. It's like your generation has gone through all of the stages that we're just going through now. So maybe it'll be different or the same in our lives, but it's kind of crazy just seeing the connections of like, well, now here I am in my career right now, but here's where everybody branched off to,
Well, the art classes were they were easy because of my time in the Ryman program. So they kind of, it was like, oh, okay, I did college art at 14, 15 years old. So by the time I'm in college, I was nothing. I had to get used to all the other college aspect of college. So when you're talking about today's generation, you guys are still, you went through getting used to being in college. Now you guys are starting to get used to being, going into full grown man status, not just grown men biologically, but real grown, the age where people are where they start thinking about settling down and having kids. And or they have the other, if they want to pursue a career that takes a lot of time and dedication, it's you're either the person that has to balance that, or you're the person that has to sacrifice that and say, okay, for me to pursue this, I can't do that.
Yes.
So you're entering that stage. That has never changed. Each generation has that.
I mean,
The hoops that you have to bounce through.
I was going to say, did you have any, I don't want to get too into the personal weeds. I don't think that's any of our places to go, but do you have
I go very personal in the book.
No, I'm not holding anything back.
I get really candid, and I mean expletives and all. If I do in the book, whenever I speak very detailed, hardcore as far as holding accountability to myself for mistakes I've made. Any game development experiences I had where I may talk about some of the residue or effects of things that went wrong, but I don't mention names of anyone in particular that I believe is responsible for a project getting canceled or things like that. But I do really talk about a lot of my struggles, a lot of my insecurities, a lot of things that inspired me artistically and challenged me artistically, and in some ways caused me to underachieve artistically.
Oh, wow.
So actually, this is a really good segue to where I wanted to go next with this. Who is the most important mentor that molded your art style while you were attending college?
Sydney, I went to art school at UC Davis and Cal State San Bernardino, which I transferred from Davis to play basketball. And academically was much more my speed, let's just say. But they didn't teach the kind of art classes that led to careers in games and film production and sci-fi fantasy art. I got accepted in the Art Center of Pasadena out of high school. It's just they didn't have a sports program. Otherwise, that would have been the school that I would have went to that would have really prepared me for production art.
That makes sense.
So
that makes sense.
Sid Mead books, Industrial Light and Magic books, like with Tim Weiland, Frank Frazetta, any books on Ron Cobb. He's also a futurist like Sid Mead. They both worked on Alien, Blade Runner. A lot of the designs you see in the Nostromo, Ron Cobb did that.
Oh, wow.
And then Alien, Sid Mead did those designs. So I studied. They didn't have Google then. There was no Digipin. So I went to Hennessy and Ingalls in California, in Santa Monica at the time. It's in downtown LA now. Hennessy and Ingalls is the bookstore that in the movie Heat, Robert De Niro meets his love interest Edie. Well, Edie is the woman that works in that bookstore.
Oh, no way.
And she was going to school for graphic. She would work in the bookstore at night and then do her in the day, and then she would do graphic design at night. Remember, she said they have a lot of books on my area, my work.
Oh.
So I would go and I would discover that store through Chris. Chris helped shape. He was also a mentor, even though we're the same damn age and kids. A lot of the things I got into the writing program because of him. I knew what Hennessy and Ingalls was because of him. I Little Tokyo, there's a lot of, so I had a peer mentor, and then I had a, much older teacher mentor who had no clue he was my mentor. He was Sid Mead. I didn't know it personally.
That's pretty insane. As far as mentors go, to be able to have kind of like a rap sheet of just some pretty prominent people, especially, Aliens is very integral, at least from what you're saying. It sounds like it's very integral to a lot of the interpretation of the design, especially when it comes to Halo. I wanted to ask real quick, just a small little question. In that ILM book, did you have a favorite design? And if so, which design was it? For what reason?
I had two. One was the AT-AT. The AT-AT, the
Yeah.
AT-AT.
AT-AT from Star Wars.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't click the first time.
Those drawings by Joe Johnston. And then, of course, Michael Congrazio, the map painter who did a lot of the Hoth sequences.
Oh.
And of course, he did the famous Raiders of the Lost Ark warehouse.
Okay, so it definitely like a revolving subject of those two kind of like it seems like definitely from the masterpiece perspective, definitely for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Those Harrison Ellishaw I like too. He did a lot of the indoor backgrounds.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
And the scene where Vader's Imperial shuttle is landing, and you could see the big dish in the background. And
Yeah.
he did that. That's all a matte painting. He did that. So those are my favorite designs from them. Of course, Ralph McQuarrie. His books as well. He basically did all the concept art that helped get Star Wars greenlit. Because all the studios turned it down, except for 20th Century Fox.
Yep.
And then George Lucas showed them Ralph McQuarrie's work, and that helped. The executive there, who I'm not going to say he approved it because of McQuarrie's work, because he didn't. According to what he said, he approved it because he just liked George Lucas's. He liked American Graffiti. George Lucas made a movie called American Graffiti. He was like, I liked American Graffiti. I like George, so I gave it a shot. But I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. What's he's in furry, and
all the different things that's going on
a lot of times people don't invest in your product; they invest in you.
Yes, it's very interesting because it does really work that way. Because I remember talking to one of my buddies. We know him, and I would love to introduce him to you sometime, Eddie, because his name is Alex. For everybody out there, he goes by Alex Church or Prod Church. He's a producer that I met with this guy when I was working at Fred Meyer, and this dude's been doing like.
I love Fred Meyer.
What?
I love Fred.
You love Fred Meyer.
Stop! It's a nice little shop. I can get anything I need. I could cook on sick food. It's very interesting because I met him there, and this idea of believing in somebody, because it's weird. Alex will go dark for like 6 months, and then he'll come back and
like 1,000,005 things.
He just came to my house yesterday and showed me some of the best soundtrack work I've ever heard come out of a singular person. But then he'll disappear, and I was telling him, like, the second that I get any opportunity, man, I'm throwing you in front of anybody that I can get, because it's that thing of like, I know who he is behind the curtain besides the music, and it's just investing in that person because I know this dude is like incredibly talented. So I can see kind of the correlation with like the George Lucas thing. It's like, hey, you made one good product. I mean, you seem like a decent person. You seem very driven. I'll just,
Yeah.
And imagine for a moment turning down George Lucas back in the day on the Star Wars project. The level of regret those producers, those executives must be having now. Like, and I understand, like, back then it was kind of a nuanced concept. They didn't think it was going to sell.
But
great things rarely get made by people who only rely on an already existing level of merit or value.
yes.
Sometimes you just got to.
Most of the great things are made that, they came out of nowhere. Or they were made by who took a chance. Yet they took a risk, and somebody had to give them a shot. Somebody had to say, I don't know what you're doing, but I believe in you. I don't believe in what you're doing. I believe in you. So I'm gonna back you. So that's usually how it.
Probably some pretty good words to live by too, especially if you're assessing somebody's character. No matter how talented they are, if they don't have a good character, it's kind of like you can kind of see them falling off the cliff before they do.
And it seems like we're not seeing as much of that risk taking today.
No, but it'll lead to it. Because everything is cyclical. I think we've talked about this before in personal conversations where, I was there, when I was still a baby, but I was still, I was 2 years old, 3 years. I still remember seeing Star Wars the first time. I was 3. Saw it at what it was called back then, the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. So the opening in 1977, I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And seeing that. I wish I could give you an equivalent of what that's like. If there is nothing like that today. There's no game you can play. There's no roller coaster ride you could ride. That what do you know that you're willing to stand in line for 5 hours around the block?
Today, nothing.
Yeah. That was commonplace when I, was coming up.
That's crazy too.
I imagine like I remember the big jump between the Xbox era and then the Xbox 360. The 360 titles were more of the things that I would be willing to stand in line for 5 hours for. Because like that massive leap in graphics, that massive leap in some of the tech that we see today, especially the way that games play, that was kind of like new to us.
To finish what you asked me as far as like the innovation where people aren't taking risks, where I was going with that with Star Wars is that, in the early 70s, you were just coming off the 60s and 50s that kind of had a lot of studio films that were made where the studios weren't taking risks anymore, and it produced cookie cutter movies that, kind of people checked out. Society was changing, especially in the 60s. The psyche of America was changing. So all the movies that came up in the 50s and early 60s, people were sick of it. So it's like people are starting to get sick of the movies that have been coming out the last 10 years. So you're going to start seeing more dunes. You're going to start seeing studios take chances on something new because the stuff that they've been doing, people are checking out of.
Yeah. Because of that question, I just want to ask you this. Let's say that you are, I don't know, the creative director at 20th Century Fox or Sony Pictures, or Universal. What would be your risk that you would want to take a gamble on for either a franchise that needs to be resurrected or something new?
Well, the franchise that needs to be resurrected, that would be a huge risk because my philosophy, I probably wouldn't last as an executive. But I also think there's certain jobs, and I'm going to try not to go on a tangent here. There's certain jobs that I think if you're afraid of losing it, you don't deserve it.
Oh, that's
Because you won't, nothing innovative will come from you. Nothing, worth, it could be like a double-edged sword. The movies that the studios make their name off of were the studios that they would have rejected, or were the movies they would have rejected most of those executives had their way. It usually took that one who was willing to go off to the reservation. So I would want to remake a movie that wasn't that good. I don't believe in remaking classics.
Because they're already classics. Why would you need to
they're classic. Yeah. Take something that was kind of stupid, but has some gems, and then turn it into something great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's what they did with Judge Dredd. The Netflix Judge Dredd is 10 times better than the Stallone Judge.
That's the one with Carl Urban as Dredd.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that one I can definitely say that was because I watched the Stallone one back in the 90s. The Judge Dredd was very
our favorite actor.
Yeah, it incredibly campy, and then they just turned it on its head, and then it's awesome. It's a magnificent movie.
Or like RoboCop when they
leave that alone.
Exactly.
The original was great.
Leave RoboCop alone.
Yeah.
That's something you don't remake. The game that just came out is really cool. You would remake that, like do that, make a cool game that's grounded, that's inspired by the movie, and takes a lot of the gems from the movie. There's no need to make another movie. But I think that answered the first part of your question.
Mm-hmm.
The second, were you just talking about movies or games? Like if I was, what kind of films would I want to greenlight, or what?
Like anything in general, because I know that like for example, like for me, one of the things that I would try and reboot on my end would be one, the Star Wars franchise that does not include the Skywalker saga. Anything outside of the Skywalker saga I'd want to get. And then like Tron. I would love to resurrect Tron from what it could have been in 2010 and bring it to an A-list status.
That's a movie.
That's a movie that is, Tron is something that is very open to interpretation, except for certain aesthetics that you want to keep the Sid Mead aesthetic.
Yeah.
So that goes back to Star Wars. Like if they just put me in Kathleen Kennedy's seat and they say, okay, how do you want to re-envision Star Wars? I said, you don't need to re-envision it. Star Wars is an aesthetic There should be certain pillars and principles that you do not change. One, the white screen transition should be in there. There's certain concept designs of the armor and the way characters are named and carry themselves that should be consistent with that universe. Because you don't want stuff in Star Wars looking like the same stuff you see in Game of Thrones or Dune, or you don't want that. There's a certain aesthetic. Third and foremost, I don't care if who does this musical score. It must sound like John Williams did it.
Yes.
For the love of God, thank you.
The music does, and all the news, the music is horrible. And now, if I listen to it by itself and then it's not attached to Star Wars, some of the music is cool. Like the Mandalorian theme is cool. That's not Star Wars. This music does not sound like John Williams.
It doesn't.
It's an aesthetic that should be there. But you could create so many stories in the Star Wars universe that don't have. I would leave the Skywalker saga alone.
Yeah,
It's a big universe.
We're done.
You could talk about just leave it alone.
Yeah,
create new characters that people, your generation, the younger, your future kids could call their own.
And there's
leave those three aesthetics there.
That's what I was gonna say too, because I think there's definitely a thing as far as with humans, pattern recognition and familiarity to things being repeated in a certain sequence is at least for me, it's something that is essential to any like great franchise. Like for Dragon Ball Z, right? Everybody's got their own style. Everybody's got their own attacks that are unique to them. Like I would do the same exact thing for Star Wars with it. Like if you have your core group, right? The story of Odysseus, right? Of climbing the mountaintop, having the climax, then coming back down. For that, his integral group along the journey, I would have each character have their own unique way of existing in the world, whether it's by like the differentiation, how their lightsaber looks, what color, what form, how their connection to the Force is. And I think it's really missing because there's an idea of trying to push somebody's idea that doesn't align with a fantasy world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But it's ironic coming from a guy who's in games, but I also think there's too much world building involved. The world is supposed to be an expansion of the central thematic story. In my opinion, you should work from the inside out. Today, they work from the outside in. They're building this world before they even know the story they're trying to tell in the world.
Yeah. Starting from square 15.
Yeah. So it's like, imagine if I built the outside of the truck before I even built the engine and the.
Yeah, exactly. You got a nice frame. That's an awesome frame. Yeah. Too bad it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And not only did I build the outside of the truck, I built all the freeways and everything that truck is going to drive on. But I don't know who the driver is going to be. I have no idea the engine of the truck, what it is. That's kind of how they're creating screenplays today. And in my opinion, the writing that went into making classic stories and classic movies, that is a lost art that needs to come back. It's going to take a while because, again, society's different. People are trained different. People are, the comparison I can think of is British actors versus American actors. That's why Austin Butler and Timothy Chalamet are kind of a breath of fresh air because they have the chops of British actors. Matter of fact, I thought them dudes were British till they spoke.
It's very.
It's like, they're American, because British actors are still trained the old way.
Yeah.
Well, the writers and just Western writers need to be trained the old way. They need to start studying the books of the Frank Capra's and the Billy Wilders, and Howard Hawks, and the screenwriters that wrote a lot of your Coppola and Puzo when they wrote The Godfather. There's a way those stories were built where the inciting incident did not happen until an hour and a half into the movie. Now the inciting incident happens in the opening scene.
Yeah.
So you have no first act to build up until that inciting incident that puts you into the second act.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot of things that are missing in the modern story, and especially what you're talking about. The one thing that gets me, and just a recent example of this was Avatar: The Last Airbender, the new show that just came out. It has, oh my gosh, here's the thing. If you are a fan of the series, it has everything except the integral parts to that story. The sets are amazing. The worlds are amazing. The vehicles are amazing. The outfits are amazing. Everything is like damn near perfect, except for when it comes to the screenwriting, for when you're writing down your characters and the dialogue. And that's what I wanted to relate to you, because you said most British actors are still classically trained. They still have some of the semblance of
Theater.
yeah, theater.
I want us to call it more theater.
Very, very like, it's very flashy, but at the same time, it's incredibly precise and reserved. You know what I'm saying? Like there's not a point to over explain things, which I think is something that's been happening.
I think that's something in what more the United States we have a problem of doing. Over explanation, over exposition of everything. It doesn't treat the audience as if they have a mind of their own.
I forget the comedian who said it, but he said, when I go to an ice cream parlor, I just want the ice cream. I don't care how it was made.
Yes. Oh, wow.
Like, don't serve me my ice cream with all the ingredients spread out on the table. Just make the damn ice cream so I could eat it.
Yeah, just make it. I don't need to hear the process of where it came from. I just need to know that it's ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain level of I've seen it with a couple of different like new age comedians where it's like their joke doesn't land, so they got to explain it further, and then their cop out is to be like, "Come on, that was funny." And it's like, yeah, exactly. And it's like the only way that works is if Bill Burr doesn't. Bill Burr, because that's his entire brand, is being brash, but it's this entire thing of like, well, my over explanation of this joke didn't work, so now I'm going to try and save it. And it's like, if you just told the joke and let the audience try and figure it out, you probably would have been fine.
And I think people are starting to recognize these things more and more universally. More and more people are noticing that there's something going on in the current part of the industry that I think we're going to dive into in a later episode, because that is a whole subject worth talking about. But where you're coming from, Eddie, you saw all the classical things that made up what the culture was back then and what things were inspired by to this day. The things that really wrote the rule books and what and where and how things should be done in forms of storytelling, game design. It seems like these are arts to us that are becoming more and more lost. So in a world like that, how do you handle the new generation studios? And as a matter of fact, like how would you say your early life transferred in a form? What's a really good way of asking this? How would you say your early life affects you, especially during your college years or anything that you had learned? How does that transpire to how you operate today?
Well, artistically or just as a human being?
I'm going to challenge both.
Artistically, I try to apply my life experiences I try to bring a certain aesthetic that I grew up on to what's being made today. I think when you can mix the old and the new and work together, that produces something much better than if it was just new or just old.
Right.
Because you don't want this gap between the old and the young, where it's like the old don't listen to the young. It's just like, oh, it's a change that the old don't want to make, and then the young don't listen to the old because the young don't know that they don't know shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I don't want to dismiss you because you're younger than me, or you don't. But at the same time, don't think I'm old because, like, what did they say today? Oh, he's not relevant, or they're not relevant, or this.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a really bad ideology to have.
Yeah, everything that came before you was very relevant to what you're going through now, because there's a saying that came before even I was a kid, and it's called "Ain't nothing new under the sun."
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of things that's being done today that was done yesterday, just in a different form, or there's some things that are very new. I mean, look at the technology we're using today.
Yeah.
There are definitely nuances that are new, but you could apply certain writing structure, philosophy, life experience. I think life experience goes a long way when you're writing something. I don't think a lot of life experience goes into the writing. It's just lore that goes into the writing, or explaining the technical reasons why this character is doing what they're doing, but not the fundamental thematic reasons. The reason why Ripley does what she does is because she's a person that wants to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a
And the only
reason.
way to get a good night's sleep is to face the very thing causing her not to be able to sleep.
Yeah, it's
Is
these.
it easy? No.
No, not at all.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like this. It's kind of like the masking of or putting a philosophical mirage on like already real problems in the world of, facing the thing in the dark, facing your fears or conquering a new obstacle, getting over something, acquiring a new skill. I mean, it's just, putting those arcs of the human growth experience into a fictional situation for a character to grapple with.
So Sarah Connor, the reason why Sarah Connor resonates with people is because people know what it's like. We all know what it's like to go through a part of our lives or our whole lives. Depending on the person, we all know what it feels like to at some point feel like nobody cares whether we live or die, or to feel like we don't matter, to feel like, man, what have I really done? I mean, if I wasn't even here, would people even notice? Would people even care whether I lived or died?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then this person finds out just how important it is that they live.
Yeah, that they're impactful.
That's what's resonating with people. Now, and executives will think, oh, the Terminator sold out because, cyborgs are in. Or action, what made people really watch Terminator 2 were the things that would make people who normally can't stand those kind of movies watch that movie and love it. My mother loves Aliens. She hates those kind of movies.
Interesting.
So it's my mentor, Brian McDonald. He's a screenwriter and a story structure teacher. Teaches a lot of classes at Pixar. He teaches their writers. And he's written books such as The Invisible Ink and The Golden Game. But he says what separates the good writers from the bad writers is the bad writers preach to the front of the room. The good writers preach to the back. The people in the back of the room are the ones not listening. Those are the ones you should be trying to convert. That takes craft, skill, dedication. And you have to know you can't do that yet and learn and study to do it. Person that doesn't want to learn and study will just preach to the front of the room and tell the back of the room, well, if you guys don't get it, then screw you anyway. I'm not talking. It's not for you. It's a cop out.
Yeah, so
Terminator 2 preaches to the back of the room.
Exactly. So like the concept of like, if I can't turn you in the back, I already know that I have followers here, but if I can't turn a normal person in the back that doesn't really seem interested in this, if I can't at least turn on that imagination switch, I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that agree with that philosophy. They don't always apply it in their work.
Yeah. That makes sense.
It's not easy to do. It sounds simple. Like when I said Ripley just wants to get a good night's sleep. Oh, there has to be more to it than that. Not thematically. Thematically is you got to face your fears, and it's in the writing. It's in the dialogue. Burke tells her, you got to get back out there, face this thing, get back on the horse. Spare me, Burke. I've had my psych evaluation. Like she does. She's the hero journey. She's avoiding facing what she has to face. That the call to
action. Yeah.
Call to action, and you rejected it at first. It's like besides, I got work to do. Oh, that's your uncle talking.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Those themes are what makes us go see these movies over and over again. It's not the lightsabers. It's not the pulse rifles.
Yeah, those are nice perks. It's icing on a cake. But if the dough isn't there, then
there's no cake. There's no cake. There's no cake.
Yeah. Before you ask that, I wanted to ask you, Eddie, if you've ever had to deal with, because I know this is one of the things that I can't put a precise finger on it, but I know at least in some terms of the party responsible for most of the murdering of like a lot of current IPs and their thinking process have two-pronged. Have you had any personal experiences? And if you have or haven't, what do you think the thought process is with people that are in the executive space that look at these franchises and are like, oh, dude, the lightsabers are what sells it? What do you think is good? Is it just because they're in a different field, or is it just, it seems like it's an average?
Trying to think like them. They're usually in a position where they don't have to think like us. We have to think like them. They're thinking from a business standpoint. And so if you have somebody, if you have a non-creative running a creative industry, you're going to get a lot of decisions that you just talked. You're going to get a lot of those results. Luckily, or I wouldn't say luckily, right now it's unluckily because it's not enough of them. There are execs that I've worked with that do think like art, and some that have taken art classes just so he could be able to speak artist language. That's a certain level of dedication that I respect.
Yeah,
It's just that just hasn't been applied to some of our favorite IPs that I grew up with, and that has been passed down to your generation. So that's why Star Wars has lost so many fans. I'm gonna bring it up. Halo is losing the TV series. That's losing a lot of fans.
So like our the helmet off and that was it.
I haven't seen.
Our channel kind of put a halt to trying to review that hodgepodge. I've still been on season 2 just to kind of see like where they're going with it. Literally last episode.
That way you can say, hey, Eddie brought that up. We didn't.
You got to talk to him, man. We did.
The last episode, I think we're on 6 or 7. I think it's 6 right now. It's like showing the lady, she's talking about like storytelling. She literally starts conversing about storytelling, how it's a tricky thing. And I knew that was meta from the writers to the audience. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, oh, shut up.
But what you taste is the story. Stories are important, but they're delicate things. Tea, like empires, centuries of work can be undone by the smallest of oversights.
It's not a tricky thing. It's a thing that is not easy to learn. It's a craft. It's a storytelling is a craft. Now, the crazy thing is storytelling is ingrained in us mentally. We're born understanding story on an emotional level and a subconscious level. It's just when you try to learn it on an intellectual, basically when you try to tell a story, you suck at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you learn how it works, then it's not tricky. It's it just is complex. Complex and simple are the same thing. Simple is once you know the complexities of something, it becomes simple. It's the same thing. Your perspective has changed. So complicated is when you don't know what you're talking about. Tricky is when you don't know what you're talking about. Who's tend to be complicated and tricky? Liars or incompetent. Either you're incompetent or you're lying.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Holy crap, man. We better. Let's just start picking up some views, man. We're going to have a lot of people being.
That's a short right there. That's a hot take.
Yeah. But isn't it though? I mean, it's interesting just hearing the different perspectives, because it's
there's not a lot of guys like some of the people that we know in the industry, right? The people that really study this, the people that really have homed in their craft at an early age, as a matter of fact, right? People are just getting into it for the sake of getting into it. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people that really genuinely love the content, really study the craft, home in and execute on it.
Know how to tell a story.
Or know how to tell a story, Disney.
Well, some of it is not. It's to have some compassion for people. You have 2 generations that weren't taught this, and then 2, maybe 3, but like my generation is just guilty of it. We weren't taught these things. It's just some of us were, ran into people like Brian McDonald, like I was looking to do, sort of get me to, he got me to see the flaws in movies I thought were awesome. And it was like, at first I'm like, no, I don't, you don't want to hear the thing that you love has flaws, right?
Yeah, I'm guilty.
But I've learned to detach from it, emotionally and say, oh, okay, I can cheat, still one of my favorite movies, but now I know all story flaws. This doesn't mean I don't have to still like it. Now, there are certain things like what we talk about. Like I don't have an insider's perspective on what went wrong with Halo, the TV series. what I do have is I can look at, there are certain tropes. People call them tropes. It's not a trope. It's a conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom oftentimes is that way because it works, because it's wise. A character that made his or her bones on being mysterious, you don't want to talk that much about the origins of that character because then they lose
that mystery. Yeah.
I don't want to know who Boba Fett is or was. I don't want to know what Daddy was. Care. When I was a kid, Boba Fett was way cooler than what you guys see now. He's still cool, but not like when I was a kid, you didn't know nothing about him. Like how you knew nothing about the chief. Yeah. You want to know about the people around, like I don't need to know how Bishop was made in Alien.
Yeah. 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 You only kind of learned about Chief from.
Yeah, you actually had to go. You had to actually dig into the lore to actually learn more about his origin. But that's for the people that were genuinely, like, really wants to. Those are the type of people that feel like they need to dig deeper. Whereas, like, your general audience, like, I feel, I think the mystery works a little bit better.
And explain it to them on the screen.
Yeah,
and it's not good. It has to be able to be explained to just the general person on the screen.
Presentation.
Without having to go and dive deeper to understand what they're watching.
Yeah, lore is not a bad thing. I just know lore is not what really connects people to something.
Yes.
Earlier, I brought up why, Jerry Connor or Ripley or Elliot and E.T.
Yeah.
There's an arc he goes through where he learned. Here's a boy who's selfish as hell who learns how to feel what other people are feeling. And an alien taught him how to do that. That's all. Is it more to it than that? Yes. But that's the simplest stuff is the hardest to do. It's not tricky. It's just not easy to do it. But it's very simple. Again, I kind of reiterating, stories are not tricky. They're not. Good storytelling is very simple, very straightforward. Lies are tricky. Not knowing what you're doing is tricky. Now, it's okay to not know what you're doing. We've all been inept or incompetent at something. Just don't be full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So which one are you? Or if she's inept and doesn't know what she's talking about, I forgive her. If she knows she's full of crap, I don't.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. Like the human aspect storytelling. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Relate to the character. And the other thing that I've learned a lot from storytelling just on my own, because I love playing D&D. I don't know if you ever played.
Yeah, I'm not good at those kind of games. It's ironic, but I suck.
I see. And the story.
I'm yet to play it.
I could just draw the stuff that goes into it.
So you're like, just let me know what you want me to design, and you can worry about the story.
Yeah, I can draw the dragons. I just can't control them.
I can't give him a hero's journey arc. I can make the scales look cool, but as soon as we're talking about going on a journey, I'm going to check out.
Talking on with that earlier about storytelling and building the engine first. That's one of the things that I learned a lot from D&D is you have to build the characters first. And what makes it a good story is building the characters, their background, and then building the world around them. And that's what
Speaking of engine, what is Unreal called?
Literally Unreal.
And but it's a game engine, and without the game engine, you got no game.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Stories work the same way. I promise you. The only thing that is different is stories and certain visual art as well as narrative are forgiving towards not having an engine. You can still sell it. You can't sell a game with no engine. You can't sell a truck with no engine. You can't sell a plane with no wings.
Yep.
But imagine if aviation, automotives, and interactive entertainment development was just as forgiving as narrative and visual art. You'd have planes flying around with no wings, kind of, teetering. Well, this plane sucks. Well, that's subjective. Depends on how you look at it.
It's everything. Everything is subjective.
Well, it's tricky.
Yeah, it's funny because
in aviation, when things get tricky, planes crash.
And then I was just going to say, because it's like working at Boeing, it's kind of that thing of, they just recently had that whole scandal where the door blew off of that 737. And it's kind of like that thing of when you start losing sight, because I'm not even gonna lie, Boeing probably won't ever see this, but Boeing, their creative decisions on who they would like to hire, as far as like, you know, hiring for a certain purpose rather than like skill-based hiring and having people that like are engineers do the jobs that really need to be done. You know, it's that coupled with just kind of like the overall around like laziness of the manufacturing process. There's a lot of just kind of, you know, it's tricky. It's complicated. And it's like, excuse. Yeah, your door blew off. So I'm
Much more complicated. Somebody's lying or somebody just made a mistake.
Yep.
But, you know,
There it is.
or somebody didn't know what they were doing. And yes, there are certain professions where you should not know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And even the greatest people who know what they're doing make mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shuttle Challenger, that was, you know, it's not appropriate to call it an honest mistake because people lost loved ones. But I don't care. Humans are going. I don't care Michael Jordan missed dunks.
Yeah.
You gotta say he sucks, or
No.
that's unacceptable that he missed that dunk. He should be held accountable. You know?
Exactly,
Now, of
and it's
course,
like-
imagine if he missed a dunk, somebody died. Nobody would care that he's the best ever at what he does.
Yeah. It would be an instant stain.
Yeah.
Expect to make mistakes, but also expect to know when to own up to it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The owning up means you're not lying. You're not saying, "Well, it's tricky." Well, it depends.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
say, "Hey,
you
I
know,
messed
it's
that
a
up."
very long, tedious process. You know.
Yeah. Instead of just saying, "Hey, man, I thought it would be cool if, you know, if Luke was drinking the purple." But yeah, it was dumb. We totally destroyed Luke's character. We just I ruined Star Wars. I shouldn't have made that. Ain't gonna do that.
I don't know what that creative decision was. That one still baffles me. I mean, you know, even Mark Hamill was low key trying to spill the beans that this was not a good direction for Luke Skywalker.
Ryan Johnson, if you've heard him in interviews, Ryan Johnson goes directly against George Lucas's wishes. Like, even Mark Hamill, who knows pretty much Luke Skywalker inside and out, at different points in the filming for like The Last Jedi, he was like, "What if we did this though? Because like if we did this in this scene instead of what you wanted to do, it would give what the fans want. It would bring back some semblance of the previous series that we had." And Ryan Johnson was like, "No." Yeah, dude, imagine doing that on a 3.7. And imagine being like, "Well, we could make these wings integral to the structure. That way it doesn't fall out of the sky." They're like, "Now
You listen to Mark Hamill talk during those interview casts or whatever that on stage about the movie. He was low key. It's very obvious he was low key trying to just say, "I do not agree with what we did here." And this is becoming more and more universal, not through just film. It's starting to leak into games, hell, any industry at this point.
And the real
We saw it in the last season of Game of Thrones. Remember, and they were asking the cast, "Oh, what did you think of the last?" And Amelia Clark, she just kind of was like, "You got that?" Like she couldn't say.
I got it.
Had her eyes wide open. Too bad I sold the rest of my character.
Finally.
Oh, geez.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That took a minute.
No. Well, hopefully it doesn't end up like the last season of Game of Thrones. But yeah, it's that same thing of like you have something great going. It's like what is it? Anybody that's watched like the Supernatural series, like it started out really good and was like, here's the we've kept the characters integral. We've not changed any of the traits until like what, season 12 or 13, and then it just went off the rails and they were like, "We're out of ideas." And it's like, no, you're out of good screenwriters. You need people that are willing to look at this and just be like, "Oh, no, I need to take on this obstacle."
So this also kind of really boils down to kind of the last point for today's podcast, which, Ed, you grew up knowing what these OG stories were and knowing what made those stories good and what makes the content good. And I like next episode, I actually plan on really digging into that during your experience in the industry. When that will be next one's focus. For right now, the world kind of needs to hear it from people that actually have a clear headspace working where you're working, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
What would you have to say? Like, how would you use your life story? How would you actually use what you've taken in? And what would you tell people as to how do we overcome this? How do we get over this hoop? How do we fix the mess ups that have been going on in this industry for the last, oh my gosh, a little bit more than a decade now?
I think there's I don't think we fix it where we said, all right, I'm just going to take it and fix it. I think it organically fixes itself in the form of just new blood, needs new blood. Remember, I brought up the early 70s. That's when the George Lucases and the Steven Spielbergs and the Brian De Palmas and the Francis Coppolas and the David Lynch, not David Lynch's, but the Ridley Scotts and that's when those guys were, coming out of nowhere. And there's other filmmakers. I'm just not thinking.
Oh, yeah, no. We know you're not trying to like demonize
Martin
people.
Scorsese.
Oh yeah,
Scorsese. That's when they were the new blood. You just need new blood, but you need new blood who understand old training, old craft with new blood. We got new blood. They just don't have old craft. And then you got old blood with no old craft.
It's kind of like, well, if I throw enough money at it, do you think it'll work, John? And it's like, no, it won't, but good luck,
Artistically, the boomers did not fail my generation. Artistically, the boomers left us something great. My generation failed you.
Well, it's a good thing that we have people like you that are not willing to give up, because because I find your life story incredibly interesting, and your takes on what's going on in the industry and the takes that we as new blood actually need to start hearing. It's actually really insightful to hear you speak about how we should be thinking about these things when we're watching it. Like the Boba Fett mystique, like how they were actually doing the effects in the olden days, like how they were actually writing these stories from the inside out.
Yeah, that's when I was looking at Sid Mead books, I wasn't just looking at his artwork. I was looking at the construction lines you could see under the wash paint. Are you going to get that kind of school when you look at AI art? No. You're going to get worse at drawing. You're not going to understand the fundamentals of what goes into making art or making a movie or doing voiceover work. When they start using AIs, for voiceover characters, that's going to really ruin art. Do I think there's no place for AI? I could be idealistic and say, no, down with AI. I know it's not going anywhere. There's a way to integrate it. If you use the 3 laws of robotics, at least it could, it won't, it'll have its own checks and balances. That's its own podcast. But I think if you want, the new blood has to learn the old way all the time. If new blood is only doing things the new way, that's going to be the beginning of the end of anything.
No lessons learned. Nothing gained.
Lessons learned, because there's no past that you understand to learn from. Which means, what did they say? If you don't learn from the past,
you won't be able to do anything in the future.
You're doing to repeat it.
Yeah. It's like how that saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Yes.
I might get in trouble for saying this, but the Nazis used to burn books. The new form of book burning could come in the form of algorithm. Where you're deleting people's, not just their comments on, but literally going in and deleting books, stuff that philosophers and people wrote. That, if you turn everything digital, you can go in there and change what people said.
Yeah, because now everything is...
Oh, that is a form of book burning. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, you don't want everything to go digital. You want a hard...
Yeah. I had an interesting question, because I feel like in my mind, there's a lot of things of like, I tend to what if a lot, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes it gets me scared for the future. Sometimes it doesn't. But one of the things that I've been wanting to pass around and get everybody's opinion on, especially yours, is the concept of the hero's journey, and how basically every great film in almost every genre is built around this structure of the hero's journey, and prologue, the idols of danger, the call to action, the first journey, the couple obstacles, the mountaintop, climax, and then loose ends, and then epilogue. And it feels like it crowns every great story. And my question is, do you think we'll ever get beyond that in terms of storytelling? Will there ever be like a bigger, better type thing that falls in line with the hero's journey, like something like a new spin on it or something like that?
I don't think bigger, better. I think a new spin, like you said. There are certain things that are so, like I'm going to come up with a bigger, better, something completely new take on the Bible. Like, I'd have to be the most arrogant, to take the Bible or the Quran and just make it better than I was already done. Back them up. Now, what I could do is use those. There's certain things that just worked, and if you follow it, it'll work, regardless of what your spirituality. There's certain things that are designed to really guide you properly. That's why they lasted so long.
Yeah.
So something that lasted so long, who am I to think I'm just gonna come and shake it up? No, I take that thing that has been there. I don't have to add new blood to it because I am new blood. Because, you're naturally going to bring something new because you're new.
Holy crap. Yeah, that makes sense.
I wonder if the reason that we as humans love storytelling so much is because before writing was ever invented, a lot of stories were passed down verbally through the generations.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. That's why I brought up those books. Those, the different religions, but they follow the same principle of guiding people through this, not just your spiritual journey, and your life journey, but generational journeys that keep us sane as a species. Without those things, most of it, not everybody needs it, but most people do. Without those guides, people, we'd be much worse off. And that same thing applies to art and culture.
Oh, your camera turned off.
Oh, camera.
Eddie, are you there?
Eddie?
I think we lost.
Oh no.
So we were talking about the human aspect of storytelling and how, like, for the longest time before anything else, it probably was just music, and storytelling was the form of being able to pass down information.
I can't see you in the camera.
Yeah, no, I'll sit down. But that was kind of like where we left off.
Sit down.
Sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
I was trying to use the voice. I don't know if it worked.
Give me the water.
Put your hand in the box. I'd have been dead. That Gom Jabbar would have been all in my.
Would have had the first thing, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's a Lazapi right there." And they're like, "Oh."
I hold at your neck the Gonjava.
Like, oh damn, I'm like the Quizat knick-knack petty man.
Quizat Hatterack.
I do remember I was gonna say, when you talk about don't try to be new blood, you are new blood. What you want to do is learn what was there before you. It withstood the test of time for a reason. You are not going to come in and just suddenly shake it up. You have a hand. We all have hands. We all have 5 fingers on that hand, but only each of you have those fingerprints. You don't have to try to be different. You are different. But the mainstay, the thing that's been there is your hand. There's a structure to the human hand that you're not going to just suddenly make a better thing than that. What you can bring something new is that which your fingerprints carry, because you're the only one in the world with those fingerprints.
It's probably been said, like you just said, that it's like these things have been there. Like a lot of these things, these principles, these ways of storytelling have stood the test of time. But I don't know, for whatever reason, sometimes when people word it in a certain way, like you just did, it's kind of like it's like getting hit by a philosophical freight train.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, that thing that, like, at least for some of us, it's kind of like that thing that we kind of like, where we don't feel comfortable, within our own skin sometimes. We don't know if we're like the right answer for just ourselves, for being in this equation of whatever career we want to fit into. But it's like, you are though. Like you don't have to try and, become this, like become greater than yourself. Just use yourself. Yeah. Like just do that. It's interesting to be able to just, you're like, all right, let's bring you back in. No, you're good enough. You can do this. Just stop trying to overthink it.
That's literally the theme, the central theme of the Wizard of Oz. They try to take it and make it more what it is. They add a world to it, universe and lore, and to see it from the bad guy's perspective. So you get stuff like Wicked, with the original thing, the original point of Wizards of Oz is you already are what you're looking for. She was looking to go home. She was already there the whole time, remember?
Yeah, that's true. And she wasn't able to see the values and what she already had. So it took an entire journey for that to happen.
For her to see there's no place like home. All she ever wanted to do was leave homes. And then all she wanted to do was get home. And then she realized that you were here the whole time. You just needed to learn to appreciate what you already were. Same thing with the Scarecrow. They all had the same arc. Scarecrow looking for a brain. But who was the one thinking of all the schemes and all the tactics and all the strategies the whole time? It was him.
Yeah.
The Tin Man looking for a heart. Oh, I'm just an empty shell. No, you're not. You're crying all the time. You got all these emotions and feelings. You already have a heart. Yeah. The Cowardly Lion did all the brave stuff in the movie. He might have been scared while he was doing it, but that's what courage is. You do it even though you're scared. It's not the absence of fear. It's the presence of action in the midst of the fear.
That's true. Basically, proceeding through something, even though, your mind's telling you one thing, your body's telling you one thing, but your mind's telling you another. And just,
if you're getting shot at and you're not scared, you're crazy.
Yeah.
There's a difference between brave and nuts. You got brave, he's nuts. Bravery is he's scared, but he's still going to go in there and take down those bad guys anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Nuts is probably like, you're like in the middle of a burning building. You're like, aren't you scared? And you're like, no. You're like, yeah, you might be a psychopath. Just a little bit,
Yeah.
Yeah. We all have to overcome obstacles in this life. And I feel like the way that I want to relate this is kind of the way Hollywood has been trying to write films, right? It's very much been they're afraid to take risks, as well as the characters that they write up, like Rey being a Mary Sue, right? In the new Star Wars franchise. It's like
he's like, hold on, wait a minute. Let me put my bib on. I'm about to go in real quick.
Oh my god.
No, I don't think I have to. I would be preaching to the front end of the room.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
It seems like it's like that was the wrong way of telling like what you had was within you, because what she had, there was no journey for her. It just turned in. It was just a you're perfect off the bat. You're already a fighter. You just go do. Yeah. You go save the day. Yeah. Whereas Wizard of Oz, you had a little bit more of a journey to pass through.
Well, I mean, you had that. Yeah, if you talk like if there are no women in this conversation at the moment, but if we're talking about strong female characters, we brought up Ripley, Sarah Connor. They were scared shitless.
Yes,
they had vulnerabilities. They didn't always, they got cut. They got hurt. They got they cried. They didn't always feel like they had it under control. But they overcame anyway. That's what makes a hero or heroine, however you want to call it. But the Mary Sue is when we had a male versions of the Mary Sue. I grew up on Rambo, all them bullets. It's like all of, never again. He's not going to die. Commando, but those, So I get it, But those movies, actually Rambo, their First Blood Part 2, he did that well, but especially First Blood. But you get my drift. There have been plenty of movies where we have these male characters. James Bond to me is a male Mary Sue.
Yeah.
That's why he never really resonated with me. It's like no man always gets the girl. No man goes in a difficult situation and always has everything under control. Yeah. I can't, So my thing is men do it too. That's not as, yes, there are a lot of men do a lot of mediocre stuff. I don't think women should thrive or strive to be as good as the worst guys.
Yeah.
Like, because this guy sucks doesn't mean you should have equal opportunity to suck.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and it's such an interesting thing because it's like I feel like the movement or the cultural statement at this time is, well, if you have anything against, like, let's just say, like, if you have anything against a female character, it's because you're sexist. If you think that a female character could be improved upon, it's not any grand idea of yours. You're just being sexist. And it's like, no, it's because I came from watching great examples of strong female characters and you're not one of them. Like,
well, remember there ain't nothing new under the sun. I mean,
yeah.
Old trip, like, I was talking to someone who wanted to, focus a lot more on strong female characters, and he said because they hadn't been done a lot. And I respectfully brought up Princess Leia. Star Wars was made in '77. It's like, you're a bit too late for that.
Yeah,
you're looking at, if you're doing that as though it's never been done before.
Yeah.
Been done. Matter of fact, it was done right back then. Like, it should be done much better. When you guys asked about taking something and building better on it, it's not being built better. It's being made worse. Because remember, it's people thinking, not only do I have my new fingerprints, but I'm going to make a new hand. I'm going to make something that's going to function better than the human hand functions.
Yeah.
Like, who are you to think you're going to outdo nature in that regard?
Yeah. Like, there's certain things that you're just not going to be able to surpass because it's, it's, I think John Wayne said it too, which is like, a man has to know his limitations, which is kind of like, you have to know, like, where your stopping point is and where you're like, all right, now you're just going into insanity as far as, like, just trying to, I'm going to make the story so big and so grand and so amazing. You're never going to see it. It's like, as opposed to what? Human nature? We've seen everything that human nature has to offer. Like, what are you going to try and do? You can't transcend it, So it's like,
there's what they say. There's some things that can't be improved upon. You can only take. Not improved upon. I mean, anything can be improved upon. What I meant to say is, there's some things you just can't reinvent it. It's not. It's already. It's like the wheel. What they say, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is a prime example. There's something that just. We found this thing that works so well. You don't need any, like, there's certain firearms that work so well. They're still effective, and they were invented in World War I.
Yeah. And even, like, per se, I'm biased. I just like saying that the I know it's the M1 Garand, but the M1 Garand, I just like saying it sounds cooler that way to me. But the gas blowback system, like, a lot of people look at, like, the Sturmgewehr 44, which is what Germany invented, which a lot of people would like to say is the first. It's what inspired the AK-47. No, the Garand inspired the AK-47 with its gas blowback design, and it's worked in just about every single interpretation from every country, from France to Germany, Belgium, Spain. They all have a version, or at least that they did at the time. They all have a version of a gas blowback system because some things you just can't get any better at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like the structure of a jumbo jet. It's the same as it was, in the 70s, 60s. There's, definitely micro advancements in jumbo and passenger plane technology, but the general shape looks the same.
Yeah, the principles of flight don't change. All you got
you just got to take whatever information you know and just apply it.
So I think story structure, art and story structure, even music, anything that goes into creating the stuff that we're all here on this podcast for. I think you bring yourself to it. That's going to be what's new because you're of a new generation, but you stick to what has always worked.
Yeah.
I think people confuse the two. People are afraid to be new, even though you're already, like the old, you said the gatekeepers, where they don't want to take a risk on, and they don't want to green light this movie that they have no idea will be the next Star Wars. Because the first Star Wars was turned down by so many people.
Yeah, and I think it's
I think it goes back to like that mentality. I think there's, when you talk about the pendulum swinging, how it goes back and forth, and it rarely ever like ends up staying in the middle, if ever, because it's constantly going back and forth. And I think we're about to have that happen again, because I think people are just, I can't even tell you how many movies off the top of my head that I just haven't seen, because it's like there's just no interest in it. It's the same boiled over, recycled, manufactured corporate garbage that, like, it's either over explained in the trailer and you know the whole story, or you watch it and there's like, it's so anticlimactic because there's no writing involved in it.
I was just reminded that there was a Blue Beetle movie. I was like, oh, oh yeah. Hey,
wherever that went.
you guys did that.
Yeah.
Too bad.
It will get better. How soon or when, I can't, I wouldn't know. Or it'll of course have to involve interactive, like VR. AI will play a part in it, but I think AI is gonna prolong this improvement or this swing where things get better, because AI is going to be used as a way to cut people out. It's going to be used as a way to make things cookie cutter or make things faster, because the wrong people who don't think creatively, who think purely with a business mind.
Yeah.
They're not thinking of AI as a tool to help us do art better. We're thinking of AI as a tool to make things cheaper and cut costs.
Yeah, it's funny.
I mean, cutting artists out, that.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a little longer for things to get better. I'm sorry. It's the new blood has to make their own games. They have to make their own movies and just study it to the point where you get so good to where you start to make here's where you're starting to see this happening in sports commentary. All these athletes, former athletes and actors and even rappers having their own sports talk shows are starting to kick ESPN and Fox's ass.
Yep. Really? I didn't know that.
They're killing them.
I have to research.
They're making these shows irrelevant. That's what a new Hollywood is going to have to crop up. A new game industry is going to have to pop up. I mean, from indies who got so good that they've become the pros, the new pros.
I guess that's true. It's so funny. Eddie, are you familiar with oh my God, what is it? It's it is God of War Ragnarok, right? The video game. Okay, so there's a YouTuber named he's a YouTuber / gamer called ProZD, and the squirrel, I believe, that is in that game is one of the mythical figures, Ratatoskr. ProZD voices this guy. ProZD is like, he was very prominent in the kind of like 2009, 2010 era of YouTube, right? Very, very funny, very animated and stuff like that. But like, he's part of this new blood. He came from YouTube. Nobody even knows a lot of the things that he does outside of YouTube, except for his own community. And here he is already in a AAA video game that's already game of the year, just having a minor character role. It's only going to be a matter of time before we start having people that, we have another, almost like a Starship Troopers, where like most of these actors are relatively unknown at this point. You have a young Neil Patrick Harris, it's this constant like cycle. So, it's very exciting. And I think a lot of the anguish comes from just being in this stage of constantly just being like, this IP's coming back. This IP's coming back. And then they're like, well, in terms of monetary cost, we had to make the story crap. And, it's like, oh, never mind.
So my retort is always, oh, so you suck on purpose. I would respect you more if you suck by accident.
Exactly. Yeah. Just be honest with what you're doing. If your intention is not, if you're here to just do a cash grab, I'll respect you more as an enemy that doesn't try to pretend to be something else. Just tell me that you're really in it for the money, and we'll just write that off as what it is.
I think that pendulum is already coming around. If anything,
it's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before it gets better.
Where people recognize that.
Yeah. They're gonna have to change because now their customer base is aware of what's going on. It's not. And regardless of that,
there is a battle even at the executive level, because you've got these executives that are creatives, even if they're not. There's ones who are creatives, and then you have executives that aren't creatives, but they understand that and they defer to creatives, or they learn how to speak creative language. They're very good at what they do, and they are if left up to them solely, things will get better from inside that machine. They're just too many. They're battling others who are keeping the machine what it is. So that's going to have to. It's going to have to come from outside that machine. Unfortunately, again, I made this point a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's just going to take some time.
Do you feel like this might be going into the weeds a little bit here, but in terms of the country that we live in right now, do you feel like it'd be the same? It's the same thing as far as politics and leadership in this country goes. How it's kind of like we had a really good period, and then slowly but surely it started just tacking down, and now we're in the gutter right now.
Yeah.
My my childhood was during those good years where things switched from the left side to the right. And I don't mean right as in opposite of wrong. I mean right as an opposite of left.
Yeah. Yeah. Just on the other side.
So from about 79 to 82, 83, that was this little period where things were, for in a simplistic way to say it, things were cool, before they went all the way religious right. I grew up with the religious right. So your kids, not literally like you're gonna have kids, but the generation of, like, if you had kids right now, they would be like 9, 10, 11 years old by the time things got whatever the new far right is, which is not a good thing either.
Yeah, back to at least having like from this really far left stage that we're in right now, just kind of like
you don't want any extreme. Yeah. Either extreme is bad. Either one.
Exactly.
Bad. It's just the United States and the world goes through that period. It's if you took it, because I can't turn my hand. If you had this way, and they were gonna, if you were gonna swing from this to that, this little space right here is when things are good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's starting to get better from too far left to where, okay, now the left and the right are meeting in the middle. That's when the smart people are usually running things.
Yeah, exactly.
And then things suddenly teeter over here because the extremists, the extremists are always going to ruin everything. The extreme left justify the extreme right and justify the extreme left.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's definitely like there, you can kind of see it play out in real time. Like what you said, like 79 to 82, I would say probably the 80s in general were probably like the last, like great, almost like, oh yeah, America is like Sylvester Stallone with a cigar in his mouth, jumping over a volcano, riding a shark.
But you had, see, that's what I mean. I'm glad you brought that up. I brought that up. You had that while you had Sigourney Weaver and Linda Hamilton and Jeanette Goldstein. You had both those at the same time. That was that space where everything was like, yes.
Yeah, we're so on the edge of cool.
Yeah, so we're going to get back to where it's not just the strong female characters. They're going to start, let's the men, the smart, the cream, let the cream rise to the top together. The men and the women. In my opinion, people will say it's my opinion. I think it's the truth.
Yeah.
True diversity happens on its own. You just have to not block it.
Yeah.
They said the cream rises to the top anyway.
Yeah.
So excellence is naturally diverse. The problem is when you try to get in the way of it, and by blocking certain people to let these people in.
Yeah, to make
and it's
everything more equal.
Yeah. So when you just get out the way of excellence, diversity happens on its own.
Yeah, because I was going to say it's like if you go back at least 20, 30, 40 years, there's this kind of like, especially with the influx of the internet and new technologies and now AI and kind of the algorithmic way of reality that is right now. If you put that into the mixing pot of everything, you have a lot of misled people that are not seeing the reason why there were, it's like that classic constrained versus unconstrained argument. Like the constrained argument sees a fence in the road and asks why it's there before moving it. The unconstrained just says, remove it anyway. We don't care why it's here. There's a lot of just not understanding where certain things come from and why certain things work the way they do, like diversity. Like if you have, I really don't care who the pilot of a plane is. If you're qualified, I don't give a crap like where you come from, who you are, what you look like. If you fly a plane really well, I'm good. I'm chilling. Thank you.
Some might think that this is segueing into politics. We don't know if this is relevant. Art and culture politics go hand in hand. You could tell where society is
As much as they
through its art.
Yeah.
Through its
Tim
art
Cass
and its
literally
culture.
said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean that's
Every episode, it's literally all it's all connected.
Politics is downstream
From culture. Yeah. And you're starting to see that happen in the modern art sense. I would say at this point, are we at the 2-hour mark? Yeah, I think we're already over that.
we're over that, but it's a good
It
conversation.
seemed like 20 minutes.
Yeah,
I know.
it really is, man.
I told you when before we started, it's like this is gonna feel so quick, and there's gonna be so many.
But you can start to see why Joe Rogan has 4 or 5, 6 hour
6 hours,
podcasts because that feels like 2 hours to them.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I would so I wanted if my phone will let me scroll. Guess
You
not.
might have to exit out and go back in.
Dude, I have the script, but it just the phone variant of this is interesting. We already went through the last portions of Your Life is Inspiring and what would you advise for other people to like get into the industry based on your life experience as per so far?
Love what you do enough to be bad at it. Then when you get good at it, keep doing it. Someone will notice it. So you meet people, cultivate relationships. Don't have a time limit on where those relationships go. They're going to lead to, the relationship I've cultivated with you guys. We're just kind of going through this, having fun. We don't got nothing else to do anyway before we die, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So this is, you're going to be where you need to be. Sometimes it's going to suck where you need to be.
Tell me about it, man. Tell me about it.
Right.
But you're going to be where you need to be.
I agree. I would say this is a really good wrap up until the next episode where we are actually going to start going a little bit deeper into your experience into the industry, as well as some other things that we're going to plan on talking about. Make sure we can follow it all the way. Make sure that we follow this all the way through.
Of course.
And because we need to see, like, this is kind of like we've discussed what's going on in the industry right now. We could probably start digging into, like, hey, what have you seen? What have you heard? Is there, what can we talk about? Right. But Ed, I really we appreciate having you on today.
Oh,
like,
seriously.
this was
I appreciate being here.
Yeah.
Call me anytime. I look forward to the next our next talk and however many times you need me to. There's a lot to cover. I've done a lot of work. So
I feel that's kind of the thing is like I feel like we just stepped into like a silo filled with knowledge and conversation, and I feel like we dipped our toes into it, and it led us 2 hours into the conversation. So I feel like there's definitely going to be a lot more 2-hour conversations because I feel like there's just a lot of knowledge to be able to be gained, and a lot of things that a lot of people really need to hear coming from somebody that has done the wax on, wax off, has worked with Mr. Miyagi and knows how to really traverse this whole arena. You know what I'm saying?
When I taught the high school program at DigiPen, that's what they used to call me.
Really? What's that?
Mr. Miyagi, yeah. What, a couple of
that's so dope, dude.
Because I would have them drawing circles and triangles and squares. I would have them drawing shapes, the same shape over and over again till your hands started remembering, similar to the way. And I used Karate Kid as an example.
So that's dope, dude.
And then just to mess with him, I started, I hate the sucker. Yes, the sucker.
Mind dimension.
Ed, your knowledge has been like extremely useful. I'm hoping that I hope more people within our age group between their years of like 23 to 30, because right now we're both sitting at 27. You're sitting.
I'd say like anybody
really.
that is at the age that they know what they want to do. It needs to be said because I think there's this pervasive mentality, especially within the West, of kind of this condescending culture and this self-flagellation of like just trying to beat yourself with guilt and remorse and feeling like you yourself are going to be what's wrong with the world at some point. And I don't think that's the case. We are not our fathers. We're not our grandfathers. We are who we are. And Ed, you said it perfectly. There's nobody that has these fingerprints. Nobody except you. And for you to think that starting your life off as you're the problem is very detrimental to just society as a whole. And I think it's why these conversations need to be had, because people are just going out here being like, well, I guess I'm you're gonna bleed this out, but I guess I'm a piece of shit, I think I'm just man, something
if it's always your fault or never your fault, you're wrong either way.
Yes.
I think that these kind of conversations are going to be kind of really healthy for YouTube. For those of you that are watching, if we plan on having a second one of these, and if anybody in our audience has questions that that you would like to ask about this particular industry, even the people that we personally know, the people that I know that are still in college getting through their bachelor's program in LW Tech, I'm sure there's lots of questions. There's not a lot of these kind of conversations that happen between people like us and guys that have been in this industry for as long as you have, Eddie. So I feel like this is a really good filling in the gap. It's like, hey, let's actually talk to these guys and like pick their brains a little bit.
It makes me feel old, but in a good way.
No, dude. I don't mean you have knowledge that we want to pick, and it's
I'm messing with you, but
that's what you did.
Yeah, it's
Is Mr. Miyagi the wise?
Yeah, that's
yeah. All right, Mr. Miyagi, thank you for joining us today. Audience,
Yours, welcome.
Audience in chat, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to comment. And you might have some questions, some statements, some genuine comments that we read through these things all the time. We kind of want to know what you're thinking and what you might have to say. We'll read through it and we'll probably put it out.
Inspire some questions that we might have.
Yeah.
For you, and I don't see why they wouldn't post that. We can.
Yeah. No, we could definitely open it up.
Yeah.
All right.
I would say the last thing is, Eddie, before we leave, do you have anything that you'd like to plug, that you'd like to get out there, whether it be social media or something you're working on or whatever?
Yes.
Check out my website with my artwork for my career and personal work. It's visualatrium-edsmith.com.
Awesome.
So if you want me to type it in the chat for you guys to show people,
we can put it up right here. We can actually.
We'll throw it in the description too, with all the links and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I'm writing a book on my career called Visual Atrium: The Art of Eddie Smith. So the kind of look, it mirrors my website, but it talks about my life, and I'm writing it, so you're getting it from my perspective.
Awesome.
And from me, from my words, and it doesn't. It's a much more in-depth, hard-nosed, very self-reflecting version of what we talked about in the podcast, but just more focused.
Yeah, everything's more kind of like center line almost.
Yeah, because you're getting a narrative. Just and this is a formal but informal conversation where we can kind of go off on a little fun.
Yeah, we kind of go over here and there and there and there.
Yeah.
That's actually usually how these conversations go.
Yeah. So, in our next podcast, I'll introduce the same with my book and my website. That's basically where it talks about my life and how it pertains to what made me want to become an artist and the challenges I faced becoming one, being one, and reinventing myself and career as an artist.
Nice.
I'm really looking forward to seeing your book and purchasing it myself and actually really digging through it.
Yeah. Do you have a timeline?
Thank you. No, I'm not going to talk about the timeline.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Confidential.
Very soon, though.
Very soon.
I have to go through a few rounds of edits. So the first round is underway, and I want to make sure it's done right.
That makes sense. Well, The second it comes out, let us know. We'll have a link to it wherever it can be bought, and you're going to have at least 3 copies right off the bat. So, just keep us updated.
Colin.
Oh, yeah, 4th with Colin, so you'll have 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie, thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe. Go duck around somewhere else. All right. Have a good one, everybody.
Here,
Duck you.
Thank you so much, Ed. Here, Gabe, hold the
You're
thingy.
welcome.
Hold on. Hold the mic. Wait, where am I?
You're right there.
Welcome to the Ducking Podcast.
That was good.